Hi, everyone. Welcome to PeopleMetrics Live. Today, we're reviewing 3 digital patient engagement strategies for pharma. So, Sean, when
Yes.
I personally think of a world-class customer experience,
Yeah.
I automatically think of places like the Ritz-Carlton or Neiman Marcus, places with really high touch,
Yeah.
in-person, super refined customer experiences.
Yeah.
So I know we're talking about digital today. Is
Yeah.
it possible to achieve this kind of CX excellence when we're talking about an all digital experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think the world has changed, Madeline, right? We know in the last year and a half, and people's
Yes.
behaviors have changed, and they're expecting more and a better digital experience than they ever before. And you're right. I think maybe 5 years ago, what you said is probably true. And if you looked at all the lists of the top companies who deliver great experiences back 5 years ago, they were all companies like you just mentioned, maybe a Four Seasons or a Ritz or whatever. And now, though, if you're looking at those same lists, you're seeing companies like Spotify and Peloton and Netflix and Amazon being really high on that net promoter score list of best experiences delivered. And I think a couple of things have changed. One, we've gotten a lot better at delivering these experiences, and two, customers are craving them. Right. And for about a year and a half, those are the only experiences that we could experience. Right. So our behavior started to change. And you're starting to see, much, much better experiences. But I think what they have in common, right, is they're still fulfilling some basic human needs. Right. So whether it's an in-person experience or a digital experience, it's still something that is easy, makes people feel good, and allows people to get whatever task they need to get done, right? So nothing's changed in terms of why it's a great experience, but the digital option has become much more viable than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another thing that they share in common with those in-person experiences that you mentioned is, of course, we can all think of great in-person experiences, and we can think of very poor in-person experiences, and just exactly the same. That's the case for digital experiences. It's possible to do it very well, and it's possible to do it very poorly. And when we're talking about today through the lens of pharma companies, that's where this element of pharma CX is so important. Of when you're building these digital experiences, you need to have those 3 elements of pharma CX to create it with intention on what that experience should be, to measure how you're delivering on that on an ongoing basis, and then manage that feedback so you're continuously improving, just like you would in person.
Yeah, Kirk and Madeline, these digital experience just haven't gotten better by itself. So these leading companies that I've mentioned earlier, the Netflix, the Pelotons, the Spotifys of the world, they're relentlessly looking at the customer journey, right? Every step of that journey. And it's a digital journey for the most part, for all the whole part, but they're still creating the experience you have on those digital products with intention, for sure, right? And they're testing these things over and over again, and they're measuring whether it went well or not. And if it didn't, they're course correcting to make sure it goes better in the future. And so, like we said, right, Madeline, with any experience, customers have experiences whether you manage them or not, or intentionally create them or not. Experiences are happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The best experiences are the ones that companies think about and deliberately create. They have a much better chance of being successful than the ones that are just by chance happening.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering, if you can paint a picture for folks we have on the line today. We're all familiar with Netflix, Spotify, Peloton. Those are, these great digital experiences. When we're talking about digital experiences in pharma, particularly, what does that look like exactly? What when we say digital pharma experiences, what are we talking about?
Well, one thing we know, right, and that's a great question, Madeline. Kirk, first of all, we know there's tremendous investment in digital, and we call it engagement technologies. And they're for patients, they're for HCPs. These are products that pharma is creating to help patients, in patient support services, understand kind of their options with regard to their disease state, insurance options, it could be locations, if there's an infusion, where to go, resources around their disease state, et cetera. examples of digital engagement technologies that I know you've had a lot of experience with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to add to that list, a few big ones come to mind for me for how pharma companies look to provide a digital experience. One is exactly just, through the website, what is information about the medication that we're providing? What's some basic information for patients and HCPs to learn about this medication? Another big piece is be for support groups, patient support services, what are the, financial resources and exactly as you were saying, locations, pharmacies, and apps as well to assist with that. If you have a patient support services team, there's often, or there's of course usually a website and there may be an app to that extent. A final category can be as well if you have a technology that is specific to your medication that is monitoring, for instance, did you use that inhaler properly, or something that is tied into the actual medication itself, and that's infusing that actual digital technology with medical administration. So those are some of the big ones. And I think what we find is often kind of pharma companies struggle a lot with certainly those first two of what's the information that we convey about our medication and about our support services, and are we doing that in a way that's helpful? And I think something to think about, especially for something like a rare disease drug, they will often be able to support patients in a very high touch way. They'll have case managers, they'll have a team that's ready to assist patients through a very complex process. However, if it is not a rare disease, something where you have a broad kind of base market, there are patients that still need that support, but they might not have a case manager model or a call center that they can call into, whether that's a hub like ConnectiveRx or to your own group. And so it's that digital experience where you have patients with a wide variety of needs who are coming into your website and your app and trying to find out information, and that's where they often might stumble.
Yeah. I mean, I'm writing a book called Pharma Customer Experience, right? And we've had some reviews of the book from friends and clients. And one of the questions people have been asking is, hey, we talk a lot about support around these, rare disease type models that Kirk just mentioned, right? Where you would have a case manager and you would have a full team, and it's more of a high touch situation because there's not as many patients. It makes sense to be able to provide that. But does the idea of pharma customer experience relate to less complex, more mass market products where you have maybe millions of patients? It's not as a complex either as administration, or there's not a specialty pharmacy, there's not an infusion center, maybe it's just an inhaler or just a regular product that people are taking. And does the notion of pharma delivering an experience to that patient matter? And I would argue it does, even in a digital sense.
Hi, it's Madeline. Thanks for joining us for PeopleMetrics Live. If this is your first time watching, PeopleMetrics Live is a weekly live webinar session where experts from our team answer your questions about customer, employee, and patient experience measurement and management. And sometimes we show you how you can achieve your goals using tools within our experience management platform. We've been doing this for over 2 decades now, and this is a great way for us to share all of our knowledge with you. You can sign up for upcoming sessions of PeopleMetrics Live at www.peoplemetrics.com/events and bring a friend.
Digital is the way that you can deliver a great experience to any patient you have, no matter what type of medication that you're offering to them. Because ultimately, people still need to understand and fulfill these basic human needs. And we have in my book, there's a hierarchy of patient needs model that I believe apply to no matter what type of drug you have. And it's about, can I afford this? Meaning what assistance can be out, is available for me to pay for this, right? Where can I get this medication? And for some of them, that may be very straightforward. It just might be at the drugstore or whatever. 3, how do I administer it? And for, rare disease, that administration piece can be very complex. But the 4th level is, do I have support for my disease state? So no matter what you have, what kind of disease that you have, that a patient has, enabling them to feel supported in that journey is absolutely possible and vital to be delivered digitally for mass market products. And that's identifying resources, and could be support groups or additional information or whatever you can to help that patient feel like, they're not in this alone. And When you get all 4 of those basic needs fulfilled, we say that the patient is confident of not only onboarding onto a new medication, but most importantly, adhering over time. Because that confidence has to be maintained, right, Kirk? Because it's one thing to onboard, it's quite another to maintain and adhere over time, because that's where the medical outcomes are achieved.
Yeah, and I would say, we spend a lot of time listening to patients and, from the feedback we do, and also just in keeping up our own awareness. And I think constantly what we hear from patients is that they are looking for guidance. They're looking for some sense of this is a path that I can follow and I'm not hitting dead ends. And when you look at some of these, websites for pharmaceutical companies, some of the worst ones I look at, I don't know if they're just all using the same digital agency or what have you, but you see the information on their website and it might just be really just something that's very technical language of, I've just copy pasted whatever, medical information is here on my medication. And then when it comes to the support page of the patient support services, it's often just a link to a PDF of, here's a number that you can call. And it has a very much that feeling of this is a dead end. It's here. Technically, it's here in practice, but it's not here in a way to actually support you and get you through the questions that you might have with the patient. So I think
the good news is there's a lot of room for improvement, and people are totally open to having experiences digitally that they used to kind of crave for in person. And so I think pharma has a very unique opportunity to continue to support patients no matter what type of complexity of the drug that they happen to be dealing with. Even for rare disease products that are very complex, the digital offering is still super important, right, Kirk? I mean, it's not like it's not important.
It is, and it is very important. And I think even if you find, not a lot of our patients use this digital offering, I mean, that's not an excuse for any other company. It might be that if it's, for say outside of pharma, if you just run a company and say, only some of our customers like texting, only some of our customers like emailing or using our website, and some prefer calling or in person. You want to provide these varying avenues so that everyone is able to meet their needs. And that's especially important in pharma because the impact isn't just a good customer experience. The impact of doing this poorly versus doing this well is, will the patient adhere and will the patient feel comfortable with their medication? So it's very important that you provide various channels for patients to get information and a consistent and easy process across that, including digital.
And measurement is a huge part of all of this. So no company can deliver great experiences without continuous measurement in real time, right? Mm-hmm. And digital just lends itself to the measurement component because when you're interacting with something digitally, you do have a great opportunity to provide real-time feedback on that experience. So there's 2 levels to this, right? Testing before you release a new digital engagement technology, making sure that the patients are going to use it. We've done work with our clients where after they're releasing it, we're seeing that there's hardly any usage. And then they're finding out why. It's better to find out why before you release it. But then there's always that opportunity to refine and improve.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned there's the Netflix, Peloton, Spotify. I haven't used Peloton, but I know Netflix and Spotify certainly ask me questions. And that's how they deliver on a good experience is they check in and make sure they're giving what they need to provide. So we do have 3 strategies, 3 things that we found from this digital space of expectations, really, especially in that patient support services space. So should we jump?
Let's look at it.
All right. Well, I can go ahead and take this first one. So the first strategy is, and I should say this is, if you're building or looking to kind of improve your digital engagement, what are the things that, you need to provide? The first is you certainly need to use these digital engagement offerings to educate patients about the support services that you are providing. Now, generally what we find, patients, when they come to these websites, they are looking to come to it as a sponge. If I'm trying to soak up as much information as possible. And from all the patient feedback I've done, there have been many times where the pharma companies I work with have said, I'm worried we're providing too much information at onboarding or what have you. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of packets we provide. When you ask patients, they are generally at a state that they're very eager to find out, I have this condition, and you are a trusted resource. You are an actual company who has invested and gotten patents and provided the drugs in this market. So they're looking to you to educate them about the services available. And what we found, this is from our independent research, is that when you have a website that is kind of providing detailed information about the support that they can get, awareness of support services is 20% higher when you do have a digital offering that is advertising these things. But it's not just awareness. Also, we find that patients who are using support services, their satisfaction is 50 points higher if they're using a digital offering versus not. And so why is that? I think what we found is that these things do tend to come together. If you're a patient and you're on a drug and you're using support services, there are a lot of components to support services that you may not be aware of, since there is just so much information that you're taking in. But when you have a website that it lays out all these details, the awareness is that much higher, and then just the ability to satisfy patient need is that much higher, because they understand these services are there that they weren't aware of previously. It maybe someone mentioned on a call, but it isn't something that they logged and kind of registered as detail. So make sure that if you have any digital engagement, the first thing that patients look for is just, I want to know what you provide. So provide that list of services in an easy to understand way, and then that just yields dividends and satisfaction, because what they know about, they can use.
Look, we know that for patient support services leads, that awareness is always a struggle. They're constantly trying to get the sales team to talk to HCPs about, hey, we're offering these services, here's what they are. They oftentimes don't have clarity around how much time are the sales reps even getting to talk about these things. When you have a digital platform for that, just a patient being able to go there without that other intermediary and then getting awareness, that's such a huge benefit. And it's a scalable one that can yield dividends well into the future. And you can see this from the satisfaction scores. When patients know what's offered from a support perspective, they're going to have a much better experience, just in general, because they don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. But once you know, you're like, wow, that's a lot of value. And I think that's what you're saying, Kirk, these kind of tie together.
Did you know that you can watch past sessions of PeopleMetrics live right here on our YouTube channel? All you have to do is click the link above. Be sure to check them out for answers to dozens of questions, along with stories, tips, short tutorials, and best practices from our team of experts. You can click the bottom right corner of this video to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an update.
Absolutely, they do. And I think, when we talk about this strategy, this almost might seem self-explanatory. Let's go, yeah, of course I need to use my website to tell you about the services that you provide. But I spend my time as I'm reaching out to companies like this, learning about their services. And when you Google these companies of either their medication, there often isn't a very clear linkage between, if I'm a patient, I've been prescribed this drug, there might not be a clear linkage on the website to, here's the support page for this drug. Or it's a very small portion of the website, and you can only find it by Googling it separately. And then once you click on it, it is just a very brief PDF that says, call this number to learn more. And it's something that, when it's set up poorly, it doesn't communicate much information at all. And that is just another dead end for a patient, where then they're more inclined to search out information elsewhere. So this seems very basic, but a lot of companies don't get this right. And this is the biggest part, is that first piece of awareness.
We're such a research heavy culture now, going and looking at, how much research do you do on a pair of pants before you buy it? You're just like you said, Kirk, you're putting something into Google. So you want to be showing up as that authoritative resource for the information that folks are looking for. Because a lot of times before they even, talk to a human being, there's a lot of research being done on these online channels, which I think actually leads us to our next one, right?
Yeah, and I guess just one last thing, exactly. I work in this space. I search these things out, and I can have a hard time finding the information on, do you have a support program, and what support does it provide? If you're a patient, you shouldn't have to be in the mindset of, I understand this is an industry offering, and how do I find it? It should be ready and immediate, and that's the first thing you need to do. So strategy number 2 is, it's not just about providing patients information on the support that you provide. Patients want their digital engagement offerings to give them a window into the kind of the fuller world of their disease state, into additional resources. And so if we so 91% of patients this is from independent research PeopleMetrics has done on patients who are utilizing patient support programs. And 91% of these patients who use digital offerings are satisfied with the connections that they receive to third-party organizations. However, if you're not utilizing these digital offerings, if they're kind of unfamiliar or haven't used their support programs, digital offerings, that dips to only 71%. And this is, it's just another example of, it's not just within your own program. For strategy number one, that was they'll be more aware and more satisfied with your services. However, if you have, clear links to other places on your website, they will also be just more aware and more satisfied with their disease state and more capable. And this one may seem a little less tangible of, this is outside of our purview. But what we often find in patient feedback is, of course, patients don't view, their satisfaction with their medication as specifically, through the lens of the pharma company. They see it as, how has my whole patient journey been impacted now that I have these support services, now that I'm on this medication? So when they feel I have a hard time connecting to others, I have a hard time connecting to other patients, connecting to third-party organizations, that is a pain point that they feel and they talk about. And they expect their pharma company to help guide them because you are much better for them to use than Google, and they want someone who can get them to the right place.
Yeah, I mean, this gets to that patient need I was talking about, feeling supported, right? When you're providing this type of information readily at the patient's fingertips, they're feeling supported. And these are maybe even third-party organizations, patient organizations that can answer questions that maybe your people can't by law, right? So even if it's a rare disease and they're calling a case manager about a specific question that maybe legally you can't answer, you have to do more than say, I can't answer it. It has to be, here's a resource that can better answer that question for you. And if this is easily accessible, the patient feels supported, which is a key need in order to onboard and adhere, we found.
Yeah, and I would say the thing that we hear very often from patient feedback is that the thing that makes being a patient so difficult, so much of a struggle, is that it feels like you're jumping from silo to silo. Is that you have an HCP who is very guarded in what they feel they will talk about, and then you have your insurance company, which is very guarded, and your pharma company is very guarded for, of course, clear regulatory reasons. However, they always feel that they're jumping between these islands, and there's no way to breach that gap. And so that's where they are doing their own research and finding things that may or may not be true. However, when they have a trusted resource like your website that says, here's a resource you can go to, that feels like bridging the gap. That feels like, I know this is a place that it will take me to information that I can trust.
It's a good one, Kirk. Very important.
Okay. So for our last strategy here, this is, again, I think, so we're talking about these three big findings from our independent research. The last strategies that we find, it is important to use these digital engagement offerings for prior authorization and insurance verification. Now, what we found at the moment is that utilizing a digital offering doesn't have any impact on patient satisfaction with their prior authorization and insurance verification experience. What does this mean in terms of the other two strategies? Really, these all tie together, and what we find patients are looking for is information on the help you can provide for strategy one, information on what other resources they can get with strategy two, and then strategy three is really, where do I stand within this process? What is my prior authorization? What is my insurance verification? And generally, digital offerings are behind the ball on this. Patients are looking for something that is more catered to, where can I go online and find out my status, just as I can if I order something online, or if I order something from Amazon, or if I buy something from Grubhub, I know the status of the moment. And this is what patients are looking for in their support program, is information that they don't have to call in for, or don't have to reach out to their insurance provider, which they're not currently getting from their digital offering, that this is something that they'd like to receive.
Our founder and CEO, Sean, is writing a new book all about creating, measuring, and managing customer experiences in the pharmaceutical industry called Pharma CX Secrets. In this book, Sean presents 20 easy to implement but powerful strategies that you can use to turn your pharma company into a truly patient-centric organization in both commercial and clinical settings. Pharma CX Secrets will be available on Amazon soon. Go to peoplemetrics.com/pharmacx secrets to sign up to be notified.
So we see this as being a gap, right? It's not, in theory, a digital offering could have an impact. It's just they don't have the impact now, Kirk, because they're not fulfilling that need. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, and this is, is something that is happening today. There are certain pharmaceutical companies and certain hubs do provide this, but this is certainly, industry-wide, this isn't something that's being felt by patients at the moment. So this is something that as you're looking to build your digital tools, these are really the three big spheres you should look to satisfy: is questions about your medication support, questions about the state, and then questions about that patient specifically and where can they get their information. And so often that does come up through prior authorization insurance verification, but it could be they want a place to make sure that they understand how their insurance is covered, where they are along in this process. So information specific to them, that's where pharma companies really need to catch up in giving them tools.
Right. And in the model, the patient hierarchy of needs model, which we've done in a previous PeopleMetrics Live, the fundamental need is financial security, right? And this relates directly to it. And this seems like some low-hanging fruit, right, that the digital piece can help fulfill.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. Of these are the very foundations of what these support programs are supposed to provide. Yeah. And so, as much as you can provide that through other channels, the learning about the condition, these are still very important, but they are higher order needs. Fundamentally, you need to make sure they feel financially comfortable to get their medication.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Anything else on these three strategies, guys, before we go into Q&A?
Yeah, I think that just the last thing I would note on these is, these are the three big buckets of what you need to make sure that your digital offerings provide and what patients are beginning more and more to expect. And I would tie it back to what I said earlier. You can do it well and you can do it poorly. And so in order to make sure you're doing it well, that's where Pharma CX becomes very important, which we've mentioned is that creating with intention and then continuously measuring. And that continuous is very important. Where we'll often see pharma companies fall down is they'll do some sort of digital study of, we're making a website, we're going to do a study before we put out the website, and then now our website's done. And there's this kind of, that's it. We did the piece, we did the website study, now we have a website. But it's often very different in practice. Once something is out there in the field, you want to collect real-time feedback from patients and HCPs as well. As they're organically coming across your website, not in a study, ping them, ask them how they feel about it, get their feedback, because this needs to improve over time. So that continuous part is key, and something that needs to be done.
I think that actually leads into one of the questions we have here, which is, it says, I've seen a lot of digital apps that don't get used. How can you get patients to adopt these offerings?
Yeah. Well, first of all, ask the patients before you launch it. Definitely be testing, test before launch, and then iterate after test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe I've told this story before, but yes, exactly to that point. There was a client that we were working with that wanted feedback on a symptom tracker that they rolled out for their patient app. And the issue they were having is that no patients were using this symptom tracker. And kind of what they found from after they launched it was that patients were already using the separate one. This was a need they had before the pharma company released it. They were already meeting it through other apps. And in that way, it was kind of a redundancy for patients. And so really, these are the kind of learnings you can find out of. If I'm going to meet this patient need, I need to understand how I can outperform kind of some of these other things. What are the other features that would be beneficial to you in order to improve this experience? Because I'm finding out, though I'm finding out in real time as we have this this app launched that it's actually not meeting your needs. So we need to kind of ask and iterate and improve upon that. And kind of, so yes, certainly that continuous measurement is key. The only other thing I would note, however, is that just because you only have a portion of your patients using a tool, that doesn't mean it's a failure, because not everyone uses the same channels. There are communication preferences, and so whether or not you have terribly high adoption, you do need to make sure that offering is there for those folks who it is crucial for.
Thanks, Kirk. And yeah, the other question that I've got here is kind of hitting on the other side, which is, do we have any data on doctors using digital offerings? So not patients, but the doctor side.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, this was much of what we focused on there was patient centric, but I've done this work with HCPs as well, and I think similar to in-person experiences or call center experiences, their feedback is what doctors tend to focus on is this easy for me? Is it clear and concise for what I need? So again, that really does come back to the feedback. You're not going to know until you roll it out and then collect feedback from these HCPs of, actually, this isn't the first thing that comes to mind for me as I'm coming to a website. So, how can we actually change this?
Awesome. Thank you. And I've got one other question here, which is, we're finding many specialty pharmacies are launching and aggressively promoting patients sign up for their proprietary app or digital tools. What have you observed on how manufacturer hubs can complement and not compete with pharmacies for patient engagement?
Patients are used to dealing with many tools or having multiple avenues that they're using, and more the expectation we're finding from patients is they do expect their manufacturer is going to have some information, whether that is a website, whether that's an app, whether that's a portal. They're expecting that from their pharmaceutical, from their pharmaceutical provider. If there's something in addition to pharmacies, if there's overlap, that's fine. That's lower of a risk than that gap, because that's often what the patient concern is there's a gap between, the information I expect from pharmacy versus the information that I expect from the actual manufacturer. And so if you find that there's overlap there, that's okay. That's a much better problem to have than not going unanswered.
And ultimately, you have to think about the patient experience. And if the specialty pharmacy is providing something that fulfills a good deal of the experience, then perhaps that's like letting them, go in that direction, or, coordinating with that specialty pharmacy on what the patient experience is going to look like is another strategy. I understand like competing against them. Nobody wants to do that. And this is still sort of the beginning. This is the early innings of this whole digital engagement and transformation. I think pharma is still figuring out, how do you interact with a specialty pharmacy that may have its own offering? Is it worth having one in addition to that? Is it worth kind of partnering with that specialty pharmacy to create the best customer experience possible? There are a few different options there that you have in your disposal, and I think it's too early to tell like an exact answer on that. But it's very important to be aware of it and think about whether you want to put resources into something that somebody else is already doing.
And it's great to hear that there's more of these types of tools happening, right? We're seeing, just PDFs on websites. So it's good to hear that, that's what's happening with more digital tools rolling out. Well, thank you guys both. It looks like we're at time here. So this has been a great overview of the digital patient engagement strategies for pharma. And I want to thank you both for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. I hope that this has been a valuable conversation for everyone that we've got on the line today. And I'll make sure that when this goes up on our YouTube channel, we include a link to download the strategies that we shared, so you can use them as a reference when you are looking to optimize your digital offerings. And on behalf of everyone here at PeopleMetrics, thank you for joining us for PeopleMetrics Live. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe right here so you never miss an update. And have you checked out other sessions of PeopleMetrics Live yet? You can click right here to watch them all. I'll see you there.